But what happened was on the way there, while I was looking at my notes on the train, I happened to look down and I was wearing a suit with a tie. Mm-hmm. And I realized my trousers were ripped at the crotch.
No!
Welcome to a bonus episode of the Germany Experience podcast. My guest last week was Lisa Janz, and she spoke about how to find out what you want from a job in Germany. Now, a few weeks ago, as I mentioned in the episode, she interviewed me about my experiences as a job seeker here in Germany. She posted that on her Facebook group, which I'll link to in the show notes. She does these sessions quite regularly where she has foreigners and she speaks to them about their experiences finding jobs and just getting tips and insights. And she also has these regular drop-in sessions where she goes live and gives all kinds of advice and tips for looking for jobs in Germany. This is the interview that she had with me, and I tell my stories about looking for jobs in Germany, and it's some things I think that I haven't even maybe mentioned on the podcast before. A brand new episode will be in your feeds tomorrow. Until then, here's me being interviewed by Lisa Janz.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Lisa, Job Coach Germany, and as you can see, I'm not here on my own today. I have the huge pleasure to interview Sean, who has his own podcast. It's called The Germany Experience. And maybe some of you people have already heard of Sean and heard and listened to some of his episodes because they are actually very valuable. And he includes a lot of information for everybody that is interested in moving to Germany or living as an expat in Germany. So, hello and welcome, Sean.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you for inviting me. The pleasure is all mine, actually.
Oh, I'm glad that you're here. Thank you so much. So, well, what are we going to do? Well, basically, I'm going to ask Sean a couple of questions of his journey, how he came to Germany, and maybe he can provide us with some tips and tricks on how he found his current job or maybe any other job that he's had before as well. And if you people have any questions, you can ask us here on Facebook. All right. So my first question, Sean, would be, what actually motivated you to come to Germany?
Yeah, so I am from South Africa originally, and our motivation was my wife and I. Then we weren't married at the time, but we traveled twice to Europe just on vacations, and we'd spent a bit of time in Europe, and we just fell in love with everything here. Like we went to Switzerland, Italy, all kinds of places, not Germany, funny enough. And we were looking for opportunities to travel through Europe. And then my wife got an opportunity through her job to move to Germany. And it was a bit tricky because I'd never been to Germany before. My wife had, but I'd never stepped foot in Germany. And my wife just said to me, we've been to Zurich. And if you like Zurich, you're probably going to like Germany. So I was like, okay, let's move there. And then we moved. The other reason for moving was because also in South Africa at the time, we were already thinking of starting a family. And South Africa, we were questioning, especially in Johannesburg, where we were living, we were questioning, like, is this the right place to raise a family? Is this where we want to settle down? And Johannesburg is great. It's sort of a big financial hub of South Africa, but it's also a lot of crime, and it's a big city life and everything. So we just decided, well, let's see what things are like in Europe and Germany, and here we are.
Oh, wow. What a great story. So this is sometimes how life plays us, right? Yes. So there pops up an opportunity and you just grab it. That's wonderful. And did you and your wife know any German before you came to Germany?
No, we found out about 6 months before that we would be moving to Germany. And then we did an A1 course at Goethe Institute, which is really just Guten Tag, wie geht es Ihnen? Schau mal hier das Doppelbett. Like really the basic stuff that you get in A1. And at the time we thought that should be good enough to move here. And we were feeling pretty confident. And of course, when you get here, you realize that what they teach you in A1 is useful as a Grundlage, as a basis, but it quickly becomes not enough when you move to Germany. So our German was not good when we came here.
Okay, so Okay, but that's very interesting to hear because normally people also, I mean, I've met also people that have been living in Germany and have never even taken any course or don't speak German at all, even though they're living here for 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So
I think it depends what you want from your Germany experience, and you can do it. I think of places like Berlin and Munich, you can actually get by. There's a lot of foreigners there. There is a lot of English companies. You could actually get by with a minimum of German. But for us, it was a case of, if we're going to do this, we want to experience as much of the culture as possible. We don't want to just live here. We want to be a part of Germany. So that's why we did the language.
That's what I also recommend everybody when they are thinking about moving to Germany. Yeah. It's always up to you whether you want to, like how much you want to integrate. And obviously it's always a difference in the feeling as well, if you know the language. And obviously, but A1 level, I mean, that's already very great because it shows future employers or everybody in your community that you're putting in an effort and that you're actually at least trying, and everything else can come later. But it's a great advice, I think, that you said that you didn't feel that your German was enough in the beginning, even though you did an A1 course.
Yeah. And that's actually some advice that I often give to foreigners who are coming here as well and wanting to look for jobs. And we'll get into the job, the information about the jobs later. But I always say, if you don't have to have perfect German when you're going into that interview, but you have to show somehow that you're trying. So in my first interview, it was a case that I could start off in German, and then when things got complicated, we had to switch to English. But they could see, okay, he is learning, and he says he does want to learn as well. So then it's a very good demonstration that you want to do.
That's true. Wonderful. Great advice. Yeah, perfect. So, and now that you're living in Germany, have you moved while you've been here in Germany, or are you staying at the same city?
No, we've moved around so much since we've been here. I think we've moved 5 times since arriving in Germany. So when we first arrived, my wife's job is in a city called Schweinfurt, which is in Unterfranken, Lower Franconia. And there's a lot of engineering companies in Schweinfurt. So that's why we landed up there, but it's a very small industrial type of city. And then we moved from there to Würzburg, and that is when I found my job, but my job was in Frankfurt. So we moved from Schweinfurt to Würzburg, and I was commuting 2.5 hours one way each day. So it was ending up like 5 to 6 hours commute to get to and from my job. But again, Würzburg it's I think 100,000 people, but there wasn't a lot of English opportunities. And at that time I needed to work in English because I couldn't do it in German. So then we moved to Würzburg, and then eventually we've moved now to Middle Franconia, which is nearish Nuremberg, about 50 kilometers from Nuremberg. And we're living out in the country.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
And is that the place, like of all the places where you've lived now, is it the perfect place for you? Do you like it there, or are you thinking already about moving somewhere else again?
No, when we made this move, we wanted to make a move and say this is it now, because we decided Germany as our home. We're going to stay here for the long term. And we said this is the move that we want to make, and then just stay here. And the reason we are in the country is because we were looking at buying a house, which is very difficult to do in Germany, and it's very, very expensive. So we had to look away from the cities, far away. So you asked if it's perfect. I don't think anywhere is ever perfect. There are a lot of downsides that come with living in a small village in Germany, especially when it comes to the language. It's a very thick dialect here. But at the same time, the people are all lovely, and we're close enough to cities for me to get back to and from my job. And so it's worked out pretty well. So I would say we're mostly happy where we are.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay. Well, I think that's the best part. I mean, you need to feel home, and you have your family around, and as long as you can tick most of the boxes and you're very close to perfect, then it's fine. And I always say as well that this can change, right? I mean, if there's a different opportunity at some point, I know that people don't want to move that often. And at some point, I mean, you've moved so often. At some point, you just want to settle. And then it's great for you that you know, okay, Germany is our home now, and this is where we want to be. And then wherever in Germany, that's just great. I mean, it's wonderful that you guys are here. So now that you've talked about your wife's job and your job, so from what I heard now, that basically means you came to Germany because your wife started the job here.
Yes.
And did she change internally with her company, or how did she find her job?
Yeah, kind of. She found a job. So it was the company that she was working with in South Africa, and they have it's an international company. It's not a South African company. It's a Swedish company actually, and they had offices here, and they were also looking. She's a mechanical engineer, so they were looking for mechanical engineers here in Germany. So she applied and she got the position. And what she had to do, it was kind of an internal move, but the way that the paperwork worked, because Germany, bureaucracy and everything, she had to actually quit her job at the same company in South Africa and then get a new contract and everything over here. So it was more or less an internal move, but she had to completely transfer over to Germany.
Yes, right. But it basically means you didn't have to go online and search for a job and apply like that. It's just the bureaucratic way was a little bit difficult.
Yeah, it was.
Love that.
But it was also that not that difficult. I think if people can make a move like that through their current company, it's kind of one of the best ways you can do it, because generally what they do as well, we didn't have to worry about visas for her or for me. They took care of my visa as well, because I came on a, what is it called? Aufenthaltserlaubnis or something.
Yeah. Right.
So, but this was like 13 years ago. So I don't know if things are still the same, but back then I just got a visa that was attached to my wife's job. So as long as she had the job, she had her Aufenthaltserlaubnis. And as long as, obviously we were married and she still had that job, then I was allowed to stay in Germany. But that didn't allow me to work. So I still had a lot of work to do, finding a job, and then having, it's a difficult situation because you want to convince employers that they have to hire you, but you also have to tell them there's a lot of paperwork that's going to come along with me because I need you to help me get this visa. So it was a very tricky time.
Yeah. Okay. And how did you then actually find your job?
Yeah. So I did a lot of searching. It was a lot of searching online, a lot of phone calls, a lot of people helping me out at the time through my wife's work. Okay. And yeah, it was a very frustrating time. We arrived in March, actually pretty close to our anniversary now that I think about it, 14 years almost.
Oh, wow.
We arrived on the 24th of March, I think it was, in 2007. And my wife, it was a case of me then looking, and it took me, I think, I got my job offer in July. So it wasn't that long. I know of people who've had longer battles to get jobs, but it was also at that time extremely long because I came with full of optimism and confidence, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to get a job, no problem. And then you just, the thing that's frustrating about it is you just send out these applications and you never hear anything back. You don't even get rejections. You just don't hear anything. So you don't know, did they get it? What didn't they like about it? Mm-hmm. And it's a very, so the frustration and the anxiety started building up in me because I started thinking, I'm not actually going to find a job.
Aww.
So it can be, I fully understand when foreigners go through that, especially if it goes longer than like the 4 months or 5 months that it took me. I can understand that it can be a very stressful process.
Yeah. And I can assure you that it's not just a very stressful process for expats coming to Germany, but actually for anybody that is applying in Germany. So with me having worked in HR, I know how we processed these applications. And sometimes there were times when we only sent a rejection 1.5 years later. And I said, why are we sending 1.5 years later the rejection?
Don't even bother.
The candidate is not there anymore.
They've moved on.
They've moved on, exactly. So, and it's just like the HR department doesn't put any priority on sending rejections. It's just for them to like basically engage with the candidates that they are actually interested in. Yeah. But that's it. Basically, I totally understand the feeling that at some point you are worried and just the anxiety is building that you don't find a job. But it's nothing personal. It has nothing to do with you. And that's what I always try to say to everybody that is applying for a job in Germany. It has nothing to do with your personality. It's just basically sometimes you don't know what happens behind the doors of the HR department. Especially
as a new foreigner. Now I understand because I've worked longer in Germany and I've seen some of the background processes, and now I understand. But at the time, your confidence takes a hit when you move to a country like Germany because you're already struggling to make friends. You're struggling with the language, and now you're struggling to find a job. So your confidence, you do go into a sort of mindset where you think, it is me, it's my skills, I'm never going to cut it here. And the only thing I can say to people is, yes, it feels like that, but just have patience because something could happen at some point.
Yes, that's brilliant. Great advice. Thank you, Sean. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and when you found, or when you were invited for the first time for a job interview, how did that actually go? Was that in German? Was it partly in German? How did it go?
Yeah. So first of all, I can tell you, I celebrated, and I'll tell you the story behind that first job as well. I nearly didn't apply for it because it came from, I think it was a suggestion from my wife's boss at the time. He came across the job spec and he sent it to us. And at that time, I was making a career change. I wanted to use my move to Germany to make a career change as well. Before I was in sort of IT consulting, and I wanted to move more into technical documentation where you write manuals for software. And the reason I did that is because I could use my English as well. There were a lot of IT companies and software companies that needed people writing that documentation in English. And so I got the job spec from my wife's boss. And it said there were two things. I left it so long that it passed the apply by date, first of all. And second of all, one of the bullet points was fluent English and German required. And I took that as writing it off immediately. I was like, well, my German is not even close to being fluent. I'm A1 level. There's just no way. And then one day my wife came past the desk and it was sitting there amongst all the other job specs that I had. And she said, have you applied for this one? And I said, no, I haven't. And she said, just apply. And I was busy applying for another job at the time. And then I just thought, you know what, I'll just adapt the cover letter and just send it. Why not? And could you believe it? The next day, I didn't even think it took that long. It was the next day I got a call from them. And I must tell you, I was running around the living room after that phone call because I was like, my first job interview. But then, of course, the pressure is on you to not screw it up. And,
true.
And it's because you think this is the only opportunity I might ever get in Germany. But so there's a lot of pressure on you when that happens. And I went, the job was in Frankfurt. Mm-hmm. So I had to go from Würzburg, where we were living at the time, to Frankfurt. And so I had a lot of time in the train, in the ICE, to look over my notes and to think about it. But what happened was on the way there, while I was looking at my notes on the train, I happened to look down and I was wearing a suit with a tie. Mm-hmm. And I realized my trousers were ripped at the crotch.
No!
So, this is me going for my big interview in Frankfurt. And I was like, oh my God. So I absolutely panicked, but I thought, you know what? And I thought, it crossed my mind, maybe I should just go home and not do this because I was already feeling so stressed about everything. But then I thought, no, you know what? I'll make it work somehow. If someone notices, I will just have to say something. Yeah. And I went to the job interview and they sat me there, and it was one of these glass tables. It wasn't even a proper.
Oh, no.
So I had to just cross my legs the whole way through. They must have thought that I was like some kind of, I don't know, some kind of methodology that I'm using.
Yes, right,
Meanwhile, I just want to see them to see my underwear.
That's hilarious. Oh my God.
But nobody noticed.
Yeah. Okay. Nobody noticed. That's great. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. But you're already very nervous. You're stressed. And something like that happens. And you're always thinking about, hopefully they don't see my underwear.
but actually, exactly. And it's on your mind the whole time. Yeah. But actually what happened was it helped my mindset in some way, because I just thought, you know what, screw it. Because so much has gone wrong now. Like, I've waited so long for this opportunity. Of course, now my trousers get ripped. So you know what? By then I'm thinking I'm having a bad day, and I just went in with a thing like, let's just do this, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And that mindset was actually, I think, very good for me.
Yeah.
And you asked about the German. So as I said earlier, I went in and I started off in German and explained, I am currently learning German, and I was open and honest from the get-go. In my cover letter as well, I said I am not fluent in German, but I'm working on it, and I want to be fluent, and I will be fluent someday. And then, so we started off in German, and then when things got too difficult, they actually offered switch to, you can say when you want to switch to English. And when things got tough, I would sometimes answer their German questions in English.
Wow.
So they could see that I had a level of understanding, but we also had a lot of times where I just didn't understand what the questions were, and then they would do it in English. And then eventually the interview just kind of switched all the way to English.
Yeah, so. But wonderful. I mean, even at level A1, and that's how you managed that. That's really cool. But I think the mindset really helped you. Oh, screw this. Let's see what happens. Okay.
Yes.
So, but I mean, you and then you got the job. So when did you actually find out that you got the job?
Yeah, well, I walked out there and thought there's no way I got that job because of everything. But I was just relieved to be out, and no one noticed that my trousers were ripped and everything was fine. And then I think it took 2 days to get a phone call from them, and they invited me back for a second interview. And then, so the first interview was with the hiring manager and HR, and then the second interview was with sort of the 2 managers up or something like that, higher up in the hierarchy. And I think also with the HR, that one was. And in that second interview, they made me an offer.
Okay. So during the second interview already. Okay. But I mean, that's a great sign. Always, there are sometimes several levels that we have to go through. But when you are invited with the people that actually make the decisions, it's wonderful that they give you the offer. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you basically had a career change in a new country, new language. And how did that go?
It was a lot of fun. Of course, at first, it's a lot of figuring out the culture, because even though it was a Swedish company, it was very German in the German offices in Frankfurt. So it was a case of getting to know German culture. And I think that's where I had a lot of my culture shocks. Getting to Germany was fine, but when I started working was where I struggled, because I think the biggest thing for me was the directness of Germans, which is something as a South African I was not used to in the workplace. We would have, I mean, some people can be direct. Of course, I'm speaking in generalizations here, but to go into a German workplace, there's a few things that's surprising at first. Like, Germans tell you exactly what's on their mind. It's a stereotype, but it's not a stereotype because it's kind of true. You get a very clear indication. So in South Africa, we would often sugarcoat things when we explain something to them, and we put it in very polite language, and Germans don't have time for that, which is something I appreciate now, but back then it's very difficult in a work environment. And there's things like it's a big jump to understand what they're thinking, and you sometimes think they think I'm not doing a good job, but all they're doing is communicating to you directly. And but you're obviously, with my cultural background, I was interpreting it as they think I'm doing a terrible job. So I spent most of my probation period going, there's no way I'm getting past my probation period. And of course it all went well, and I stayed at that company for 9 years.
Wow, that's a very long time.
Yeah, it was a great job for me.
Yeah. So I guess it was also a great start in order to really get used to the culture and so on, and how working in Germany is. And the thing that you are saying, I've heard that so often, that we Germans, that we don't even know that the directness that we're using in our communication can be, just can put you off at some point. And that's something that we Germans probably have to learn when working in an international environment. Okay. So, and that was your very first job, and that was kind of like technical writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, and what are you doing now?
So now I'm a content marketer, which is actually closer to what I always wanted to be. Through most of my early working days, I wanted to get into more writing, more creative stuff. And so I made the leap in 2018 to change my career. And by then I'd been in Germany for 11 years. Wait, I don't know what the math is. My math. I think it's 11 years actually. And so my German was good enough, but I'm still working in English. I'm working for a smaller startup company, a startup kind of company. I don't think that actually a startup by definition, but we produce blogs, videos, all kinds of content in English, and I'm involved with that. And it was a great career move to make. But the great thing about that career move was, again, it was this mindset of, you know what, I've really wanted to do this. This job came up and it kind of fit my profile, like exactly how I needed to. There was some things that didn't fit. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to try for it and I've got nothing to lose. And I just went in and again, this attitude of I don't want to say not caring, because you should care. Like you have to care. And obviously I did care, but you've also got nothing to lose. So you say, well, then that's the way it is if I don't get the job. And that changes the way you approach it. And I was also very honest. I said, I've never done marketing before. And so it was just one of these things that the mindset helped me, I think, convince them.
That's brilliant. To take me on. How did you find that job? Did you find it online or through your network?
I found it online through LinkedIn. And so I've had 2 jobs since my first job in Germany, and both of them I found on LinkedIn.
Okay. Well, that's a great advice as well. And many people search jobs through LinkedIn. I think that's a great network to go through, and a job platform where you can actually find jobs.
It is. But interestingly enough, I don't usually apply through LinkedIn. So I often find jobs, because LinkedIn's very good at popping up. Once you've looked at a few job specs, it starts sending you similar job specs that you might not have seen. And then you're sitting and your phone pops up a notification and says, this company needs content marketing. You're like, let's look at that. Yeah. And then you're more likely to find some, or at least I think I'm more likely to find something because it pops up in my face. But then what I do is I go and research the company on their websites, and I apply directly. I sometimes say that I found you on LinkedIn, but I apply directly on their website for the jobs. I think it's just easier to get directly to the company.
Yes. And it's also a great way of you doing that, because actually it shows that you are investigating the company a bit more, that you're like interested in, and you're looking at what is the company actually doing. Do I fit to their vision, mission, or whatever they are doing? So that's a great way of applying. I actually have I know that people find job ads through LinkedIn, or that LinkedIn jobs find them, but I've never heard of anybody who actually applied through LinkedIn. So that's great that you just write your own. Okay.
And just to say something about that as well is also what I think the difference for me with this job is as well was that I knew. Well, I've kind of lost my train of thought now, but I was going to say, that I was looking at the company. You were talking about researching companies. Because I wasn't desperate for that job. I also went into the interview saying, I want to see if this company is good for me. Like if this is a good fit for me. And that is also a big mindset that I think, and I get that new foreigners who are just like want to get in the door can't necessarily have that mindset, but I think it's very good if you try and say, but is this a good fit for me? Because that's a big point.
Yeah, that's a very big point. That's great of you to say that, because actually, normally we come from a mindset, I really need this job, or I really want this job. I really want to work in Germany, and just any job will do. And but just taking a step back and really analyzing, does this company fit to me, is a very valuable advice, because I always also say, use all of the time that you get. So during the job interview, how are they treating you then? And during the probationary period, how are they treating you during that period? Because that's how you get a feeling for that company and whether you actually fit together. And if you don't feel comfortable, then still keep going and keep applying.
Exactly.
So, okay. So now I'm very glad that you've changed your career path as well, and that you've adjusted to the way that you actually always wanted to work, or that you've imagined. Is there any area that you are very curious about currently, that you are like, what are you researching the most for your development for yourself?
Mostly at the moment, because it's got to do with things that I do in my private life and at work, is I'm doing a lot of research about video and audio production. So because at work I present YouTube videos, and I also obviously, like I said, I write blogs, but in my spare time, we mentioned at the top, I have a podcast, and I'm branching that podcast out into YouTube. So this stuff is relevant, like social media and video and audio production is relevant for me right now in all spheres of my life. So that's something that I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts about, or watching tutorials on, or just reading books about how to do this stuff. So that's my big curiosity, I would say, at the moment.
That's great. That's great. And then, I mean, this is very helpful for your job. And I mean, your employers, or your managers, they see, okay, he's really into this stuff. So you are investing your time whenever you can into this topic, and it's valuable for your private life and your work life.
Yeah.
So that's a win-win situation.
Win-win. I love those.
That's brilliant. Okay. So, and then now you've mentioned your podcast, and obviously this is something that how people can find you. But one question that I have: why did you start this podcast?
Many different reasons. I've always wanted to be in radio. That was something that I wanted to do as a kid. I always used to pretend I was a radio DJ, and it just never happened. I ended up, as I said, in IT consulting, and my life just went in a different direction. But now with podcasts, it's relatively easy to get into, and I thought I could be good at it, so I started the podcast. So that was the one reason. The other reason is I've been in Germany for such a long time, but I'm still fascinated in how new foreigners feel when they arrive, and by new I mean the first 5 years or so, while you're figuring things out, learning the language and stuff. Because I can't remember everything. So when I speak to foreigners who are new and they tell me something, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that was a huge stress in my life. Now it is not even a second thought, but and it kind of makes me nostalgic and it gives me a bit of perspective on my own journey when I speak to foreigners. So I enjoyed doing that so much. I thought, why don't I start a podcast and talk to foreigners in Germany about their experiences here? And that's what I did. And I didn't think it would, I kind of thought there would be a few discussions, but actually everyone's got such a unique story. There's some things that are the same within the framework, but some people react differently. People are coming from different cultures, that I'm still doing it 70 plus episodes later. So, and like I said, it's given me such a perspective on my own journey as a foreigner here in Germany. So that's why I started, and that's why I keep doing it.
Yeah, and it sounds so great. I mean, you've come a long way, and there are so many years that you've spent in Germany already. And it's great to see that you then realize, oh yeah, that was something that I worried about back then.
It's something that I often say to foreigners as well. Like, the things you feel now are stressing you out and maybe even causing you to cry at night, or frustrations. These things, if you just stick through it and find strategies to get through these things, listen to other people who have experience with these things, I promise you, in 3 years' time, this will not be an issue in your life. It's just something that is really huge right now, but it's a temporary obstacle, and nothing is permanent. So you just keep moving through these things.
Wow, what a wise saying. That's great. Wonderful. Yeah. So, and then how can people actually find you? Where can they listen to you, and what do you offer them, basically?
Yeah, so the podcast, as we mentioned, it's a podcast about life in Germany, but through the eyes of outsiders. I also have interviews with Germans, and someone on this call is going to be a guest on the show pretty soon. Lisa, I've invited Lisa to come on and talk about some stuff on a future episode. So we have Germans giving advice, but we also have the stories of foreigners, and you can find it at thegermanyexperience.de.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I hope that everybody has gotten some value out of our wonderful live session here. So there were a lot of benefits I see that you've talked about, and many wonderful hints and tricks that people can actually use if they want to come to Germany. And I can recommend Sean's podcast. So just go through his episodes and pick whatever information is very interesting to you right now, or anything that keeps you awake at night, because Sean has interviewed many people, and there are so many experiences that you can just work with, and that's very, very helpful. Sean, thank you very much for being a part of my lives here with the Lisa Job Coach Germany. It was a pleasure, and I can't wait to be on your podcast.
I can't wait either. I'm very excited, and thank you so much for inviting me to this live Q&A. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate your time and your effort here. So thank you very much, and bye-bye, Sean.
Bye.